All right, and you probably all got that message that said recording was started. I hope so. Okay, at this time, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Randye Jones. Randye Jones is formerly from Grinnell College. She retired a few months ago. Randye Jones holds her Bachelor of Arts degree in music education from Bennett College in her hometown of Greensboro, North Carolina, and her Master of Music degree in vocal performance from the Florida State University, Tallahassee, with a doctoral study in vocal literature at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. Randye has gained recognition for her research of and writings on African vocalists and composers through her online projects, The Art of the Concert Spiritual, Afrocentric Voices in Classical Music, and the Spirit. In addition to presentations as a performer and lecturer, Her first book, So You Want to Sing Spirituals, A Guide for Performers, was published by Rowman and Littlefield in October of 2019, and McFarland published her second book, Recorded Solo Concert Spirituals, 1916 to 1922, in May of 2023. Randye retired from last October after 18 years managing and cataloging the media collections for the Grinnell College Libraries in Iowa. Randye, it's all yours. Go ahead and share your screen when you're ready, and you can start your presentation. I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen. Oh, never mind. You're good.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, or still good morning, depending on what part of the country you're in. Now let me just make sure that I can find my screen. Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Not yet, Randye. Can you try again?
Of course, this is going to happen. Okay.
All right, we can see your nope. What I'm seeing now is a
there it is.
Now I'm seeing it. Okay, it looks good, Randye.
Okay. I wanted to talk with y'all a bit about a project I've been working on, or I should say an approach to trying to, in my cataloging, that I wanted to share and have conversation with you about, and hopefully get some insights from you about how we could consider expanding, growing the approach, the ways that we catalog music that does not come from the Western European tradition. I have been researching, in my case specifically, vocal music that comes from the spiritual. And I find that as I have been purchasing materials for the library's collection at Grinnell College, that getting those items cataloged created some rather interesting challenges. I felt like it, and I noticed it quite a bit in my research. Records that I would find in OCLC would be missing information about the songs, who the composers were, sometimes who the vocalists were, etc. And part of that was due, of course, to the recording itself, because of some of the interesting things they do with those recordings and how they describe them. But some of it, I thought, really, was there some way that we as catalogers could make these materials more easy to find, to identify, using maybe some of the things that we do for cataloging Western music materials, especially classical music. And so what I said, well, unfortunately, my timing for this was kind of awful, because as has already been noted, I've retired, so my access has gone almost to nothing. So it's like, oh my goodness, I really should have pushed this a lot sooner, but I'm going to just go ahead and plug on along and see how much I can do to inspire others to maybe jump into this project. So where we are going and why, I actually have explained a little bit of why, but where we're going, I'm going to start by telling you a sad story. And no, I'm not singing today, so thank goodness for that. And then wondering if maybe, as I said, a different approach might be feasible as far as how we catalog non-Western material, non-Western music. And then maybe examining some ideas and considering the pros and cons of using those ideas, or maybe looking at some other options to consider that would be as effective, but maybe different than what works in the other environment. So now the sad story. I had acquired for the Grinnell collections the Kathleen Battle edition, which was a very big set. And I thought, I'm going to go ahead and catalog this. This will be my last thing to catalog before I hit the wild blue yonders. And I said, well, surely all of this is going to be, because it's Dolce Gramophone, it's all been previously released. I should be able to go in and find those records, make a couple of changes, and then get credit for this big record that I didn't have to do a whole lot of work on. 5 days later, I was still cataloging this one title. And that happened because of a couple of different things. One was that I discovered that there was, in addition to the previously released material, a lot of new content. Secondly, some of the previously released material that had been previously cataloged had been cataloged using old cataloging rules. So that meant that I still had to do updates to bring them up to RDA standards. And then, of course, what the part that's going to be discussed here today was that a lot of the recordings, even if there were records in the database, did not have any or very little information about the spirituals that were on those recordings. And so it turned into a massive project. Unfortunately, yes, I did get it finished, and it actually is in OCLC, and you're going to see it shortly. But it just seemed like that was an incredible amount of work, and I realized that is that kind of a challenge that maybe from a time sense, a lot of people are not going to be willing or able to do. Anyway, I wanted to show you a couple of examples of what I often see and why I run into some concerns about how these items are approached. In this case, this is a music score called Art Songs and Spirituals by African American Women Composers. This collection has only been out about 10, not quite 10 years, but it's already a standard collection for those who are studying music by African American composers, women composers, and either both, I should say, or they're just looking to explore music that is not the standard in vocal studio. And so, but if they want to find out what's in this collection, one of the challenges is that the person who cataloged this did a great job as far as the contents notes. The songs are identified, whether they are spiritual settings of spirituals, or whether they are art song that are not using the spiritual historical pieces. But unfortunately, one of the things about spirituals is that often the composer, the performer, the publisher can make decisions about how that song is titled. Do they use standard English? Do they use dialect? Do they use a combination? And so what the cataloger did was, of course, use the title as it was listed in the work, and that was what they were supposed to do. I'm not questioning that in the slightest bit. But what happens though is that it puts the challenge onto the searcher of these pieces to make sure that they are searching the exact spelling of the spiritual as it is in those pieces. So if there's any variation, so say, for example, for the I'm a poor little orphan in this world. Let me back up again so you can, oops. When this in this spelling, if you decided instead of the spelling that was used for the score, if you type the word little, Little, and as used in standard English, you're not going to find this record. You just won't. And so then we've lost the opportunity of telling the user, the patron, that this particular score is available with this particular spelling. Then for the 700 fields, they took the approach that is anticipated or recommended, which was to, oh dear, I didn't push that down far enough. 1 second. Okay, actually, I have now jumped a couple of screens, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you what happened here. Okay, this is for the CD. And the same issue applied. There was a CD that is a recording of the songs from that music score. So in this case, they have, and what I wanted to show you on the music score was they set up the 700 fields so that say, for example, for Undine Smith Moore, she had 3 songs, so they just said Undine Smith Moore, Undine S, title, song selections. Okay, that was perfectly fine. Unfortunately, though, that also means that you don't know what songs were in that collection, and that's the decision that has to be made in that cataloging process. But in this case, for the CDs, even though the recording has the spirituals included, the person who cataloged this only analyzed, only added 700 added entries for the art songs that were not spirituals. So we have no way of really knowing which that those spirituals were actually on this record. So there's a situation where the patron is not assisted by be able to find this recording and know that that particular work that they may be seeking is on that recording. Okay, now we get to see what I attempted to do with the Kathleen battle. The areas that are highlighted are parts on each of the recordings that have a spiritual, at least a spiritual on it. I tried to line a couple of places through, and I realized I just did not have the steadiness of hand to be able to create a straight line. So rather than letting y'all have to see my up and down and all around drawing, I just marked to the side where some of the spirituals are located on some of in this particular portion of the 505 fields, the contents notes. And it actually, there's at least one recording in this set where you can see disc 10 is actually all spirituals. Much of CD 11 has spirituals in it, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a number of spirituals that are included in a number of her recordings. So the way I tried to approach this was to have the extended notes. Let me make sure I haven't just passed. My apologies. It looks like I've done something kind of strange here. Oh, no. Okay. All right. I'm where I'm supposed to be. Then I did actually created added entries for individual spirituals, or in the case, for example, for Evelyn Simpson Currington, for example, I did simply say songs selections. The other thing I tried to do, because I found a couple that had already been, or at least one that had already been created, was I added a few 730 uniform titles, so that I could be able to search for that title and hope that I was giving the patron the opportunity to find at least that recording, whether they used the spelling they had in hand or not. Now, just to give you a slight sense of just how big, or how varied, I should say, the options can be, this was actually a portion of recorded solo concert spirituals where I had made the decision. I actually borrowed from my life as a cataloger to create the concept of using uniform titles in organizing the recordings that were in that book, so that no matter what spelling of the spiritual that was on the recording, the user of the book could find that spiritual. The song, so all of the songs, no matter what the variation that spelling, are organized in the book by one uniform title. But then what you see right here is the index that shows where those particular different spellings are in the book. And so it occurred to me, why not turn that back around and see if there wouldn't be some way that these variations could be made available and searchable in the catalog. So as you can see, every time you think there could only be one way that the words every time could be spelled. But as you can see right there I see at least 3 or 4 different spellings. The word "the" could be English language, or it could be dialect. Each one of those makes a difference in how you are able to find that particular title. So, I guess what I'm trying to get an idea from you about whether or not it's feasible to look at expanding how non-Western music can be cataloged to open up to the patron, how this music can be made available to them, how they can search no matter what, what variations you might have on the title, whether or not it uses dialect. whether or not the right composer that they're looking for composed that work, or whether another composer did, etc. And so I'm hoping that, in the time that we've got left for this presentation, you might be able to give me some insight based on your experience of cataloging overall, to see if, creating added entries would help facilitate the access of this music. Whether or not creating 730 uniform titles would help. Or are there other options that we can consider? And of course, I'm talking specifically about spirituals, but that applies, I think, beyond the concept of the spiritual. I think if you, when you're cataloging, if it's something that is, I don't know if it's necessarily popular music per se that would be benefited by that, but certainly there are other styles of music that, considering those options of, might come into play. So I'm going to open up the floor. Any comments, suggestions, questions? I see a hand up. Mark.
Thanks, Randy. I'm enjoying this presentation. I have a question for you, not necessarily a comment. You probably remember that in AACR2, spirituals were almost always treated as works of unknown authorship, and therefore almost always entered under title. And anybody who put a finger in as far as arranging or harmonizing them was not considered a creator, but was considered sort of a contributor. And my sense is that RDA has at least opened the door to providing more agency for arrangers and harmonizers to be considered creators, and therefore an access point can be constructed with their name in the title for their harmonization of something. I'm just wondering how you feel about that. Because how you approach that could have a bearing on how you would address the concerns you've got.
Thank you for that question, because honestly, I think that was probably an element that I should have brought up in my presentation. I'm actually have been a very strong advocate for the idea of thinking of the composer. I do not use the term arranger. Because from my perspective, spirituals are primarily either folk music works that were created as folk song that we do not know who the creator of that piece was. They are from the oral tradition, and just like most folk song, we have no idea from what the original source was. And then I tend to think in the terms of concert spirituals, works where the composer took that source material, those folk songs, and reworked it and created their own work, either accompanied by various instrumentation and voice, or so it could be solo voice, choral music, etc. And so from that perspective, I've been thinking as far as a creator, a composer, composing a concert spiritual, and giving them the credit for that creation. Mark, do you still have your hand up? Or are you?
Oh, sorry. I'll just
I
say
do that
that.
all the time. That's why I asked.
There we go. Yeah, I'll just say in response that this question gets exacerbated when we're not talking about cataloging an individual piece of music. When you're talking about cataloging an individual piece of music, the relationship between this composer, arranger, harmonizer, whatever, and the title is fairly explicit. But when we're talking about a situation that you're talking about, when you're on a sound recording with many access points, keeping that connection made is much more difficult.
Yeah.
Hand down, no.
Well, but I look at it from the perspective of, if you have a set of Beethoven, all of his art song, there is going to be a tendency, or, you know, even if it's not just one composer, but they're multiple composers, they're all songs of the 19th century. You're still going to have a tendency to create added entries for each of the songs, unless they are 3 or more, then you say song selections, correct? So my question would be, why not apply that same approach to non-Western music? If you have, say in the case that I have the Kathleen Battle, and even if I only had one CD that had, say, the concert she did with Jesse Norman, that was all spirituals, I would still think that I could easily create added entries for each of the spirituals on that single recording and credit the composer of each of those songs, whether they were individual, whether it was for solo voice or for choral. And which of course starts a totally different debate on my part about, is there some way that we could find a way to break the subject heading spiritual songs into something that allows a person to tell, are you dealing with works for solo voice? Are you dealing with works for an ensemble? Because right now that subject heading spiritual songs is doing some heavy lifting. It is covering such a wide range of content. And I would love to see something done to try to either expand the number of subject headings available that further describe what type of spiritual that person is cataloging. Is it for solo voice? Is it for ensemble? Just like you have choruses, sacred, et cetera, or songs, high voice, et cetera. Spirituals songs is just so big and so broad. And I guess that's basically where I'm going. Is there a way that we can make the cataloging we do more access friendly? Yeah, I see another hand up.
You don't have to try to, it's a lichen.
Thank you. Lichen. I didn't want to mess your name up, so I appreciate you telling me how to pronounce it.
Yeah, you're okay. So I was just thinking about your presentation kind of from a singer perspective. I went to UK and studied with Everett McCorvey, and I was just going to say, and then you said it, the point of like ensemble versions of spirituals versus these solo arrangements, but also, I mean, the fact that whenever a voice teacher tells a student to go, you know, like go get this person's version of the spiritual or listen to this person's recording of the spiritual, you know, it kind of, because of some of the improvisatory nature where people are looking for a specific rendition or a specific arrangement, I think that those composer and performer access points are probably more crucial than you know, just like Beethoven songs, Mozart songs. You know, we look for singers for those too, but when it comes to like jazz and spirituals both, it's the improvisation that we want to listen how other people did it. So I really enjoyed your presentation.
Well, thank you. But you raised the point, I guess, that why it's become a point of interest to me is because I too am a singer. And I had found that when I was trying to find these works, it was just rather hard. And especially when you have recordings where the I don't know whether it would have been the publisher or the performer chose to use the term traditional. No, it is not traditional unless they are standing out and, singing something a cappella. That's if a composer took that piece and did something with it, it is no longer traditional. And the composer deserves the right to be credited for it. But as far as trying to find out who that work, who actually composed that work, or that is far beyond what a normal cataloger could even be close to anticipating. But it's still, that is that's one of the many things that this kind of music tends to create as far as a challenge for getting it properly credited. Margaret, do you have your hand up?
I do, because we have a question on Zoom that I wanted to share with you, Randye.
All right.
Question is the CD that you cataloged available in the Grinnell College Library? And is that CD available on interlibrary loan?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
That was one of the last things I cataloged. I know it's there. Curiously enough, as of last night, our library, the only one that still that's listed as holding it. I'm going to let me show you something. The last thing that was purchased that I had kind of opportunity to purchase was this monster. The Jesse Norman, the Complete Studio Recitals. That's a 42 CD, 3 DVD set. I have seen, I noticed that there are a couple of records that, just basically had the title and that was pretty much it on the records. I am looking forward to whoever is going to be masochistic enough to catalog this thing, whether they take it all the way or not. Because so much of it, I had thought the Kathleen Battle would have a lot of previously released material. This one really won't. There's a lot of the content there that was never released. There were things that she had recorded in studio and they never actually released the recordings. So that's it's not even a matter of, hey, I can find records and match them together. There's going to be and it's not just spirituals that are going to be contending issues. There's some things there that are just simply, no matter what you do, they're going to require some extensive work. So I'm not going to be surprised if it doesn't get cataloged for a very, very, very long time. Anyway, but I looked at it and I was grateful that it didn't arrive because it literally was just released. In fact, that the library gave that to me as my as a farewell gift, gave me a copy of it, and then they purchased a copy for the library. It would not surprise me if it just, I don't know who would really want to take this monster on. And I'm not sure whether I answered your question, the question that was asked or not. But yes, the Kathleen Battle is there and it is available. Grinnell College has now been for, I guess now about 3 or 4 years, an interlibrary loan institution of sound and video recording. So yes, it is available. Question, Karen.
Hi, Randye. Thank you for your presentation. I just have a couple of comments.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of what you want to do, assuming you can't attribute a spiritual to a particular composer, you could create an authority record and you could list all the variant titles. I've done that. I haven't done it in a long time. I haven't had the need to, but you could do that. That would help that. And then if at some point you had a particular version that you could credit a composer, you can put that, a tie to that in the authority record. So that would help that.
Yeah.
And as far as spiritual songs not being sufficient because you need a medium of performance, well, you can put that in the 382, you can put that in the 650. So that should help with that.
382. Yeah, well, 650, I have used that, you know, as I said, choruses, sacred,
Right.
you know,
Or mixed
voices
voices
or
or
whatever.
whatever. And you can put chorus, you know, mixed chorus in the 382. So you can get that in there, and you can even, and I don't know how well this really works in the machine, but you can go so far as to, if you have a compilation where you've got a solo singer on some of them and a choral chorus on others, you can put different 382s with a subfield 3 indicating which of the spirituals that particular medium of performance applies to.
Okay. All right, thank you for those suggestions.
Sure. I mean, this is a big, a big problem I see. And part of the problem is just simply not enough people with time to make all the authority records and do the detailed work in bib records. Different institutions have to, you know, weigh getting something out there as opposed to getting nothing out there, as opposed to getting something more precise out there.
Oh, believe me, I 25 plus years of catalog, and I've had that exactly those decisions to make too. So
Yeah. So keep up the good work, even though you're retired. It sounds like you're still engaged.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I had you had talked about authority record for the variant titles. I had looked at the 730.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And but yeah, that the very few that I found that covered specific spiritual titles weren't terribly comprehensive or especially helpful, but that I guess that's one of the things that I would see as possibly a fairly short to create. Well, I'm retired. I'm going to start talking about it's not going to take a lot of work to do. Yeah, right. I'm not the one doing the work. So, hey.
But you can go in, even if you have an authority record already, if you can figure out that this is the one you want, you can go in and put the alternate titles in there, the variant access points in the authority record after the fact.
Yeah, because I can tell you one of what I think of now is my favorite variation that drove me nuts for weeks, as I was doing my research, was a title called "The Deceivers." Which all I knew was that it was a Roland Hayes setting. I finally lucked out and got to converse with the gentleman who actually recorded the spiritual. Come to find out, for some reason, Roland Hayes had called the title "Scandalize My Name," The Deceivers. The word deceivers is nowhere in the song. And because I didn't have the recording in hand, I was working from a sheet. I could not listen to it and tell, yeah, this is "Scandalize My Name." But of course, you know, one of the things I would love to be able to do is then to go into an authority record, add the title "The Deceivers," and then someone else running to that title trying to catalog it would know that that was what it song actually was. And you know, anyway, I'm seeing a couple more hands pop up, so I better Joseph.
Hi.
Hi.
So this might be too broad of an extrapolation and not apply to this situation at all. I will let everyone know, I'm a paraprofessional, so I'm still very much learning a lot about cataloging, especially cataloging sound recordings. But
That's okay. So am I. I'm a paraprofessional, or was one. So.
But what you were talking about in terms of applying a composer to these arrangements, which I think that like that impetus of like we want to, because these, like what you said, these are not traditional. They have instrumentation. Unless they are truly a cappella, these are new compositions in a way. In terms of popular music in a similar avenue, I'm curious, how are like remixers cataloged? Because in my mind, a remix of a popular music song often is very much a new composition. They are often very much taking an original work, but creating a new original work the out of the lyrics and the melody of that original work. And if how remixers are cataloged in sound recordings, if that could then be applied to these arrangers slash composers for spirituals as well.
Oh, help! Because can anybody anybody else address that? Because I'm honestly don't recall having a scenario like that where I've had to make decision on how to describe that in my record.
Well, I mean, I can jump in just from, my name's Damian Eismaner. I'm from the Library of Congress. Just to jump in, I mean, I think from what we're essentially talking about are work boundaries, and in the case that you described about remixes, sure, it could definitely be the decision that a remix, that the amount of modification that's being done approaches is enough to send something off into new work territory. But I think we have to be clear that the cataloging rules as they're currently envisioned, that those work boundaries have to be developed by communities such as these. But the cataloging rules are not the place where we can provide guidance that certain modifications might lead to a new work, but those are cultural boundaries. So, I think part of the jobs of communities like this are to figure out for different classes of music, different types of music, where those boundaries might be. So it doesn't provide a definitive answer, but it does provide a way forward.
Thank you. Did that help?
Oh, absolutely.
Tom. Oh, okay, great. Tom, you have your hand up?
Yes. Hi, Randy. Thanks
Hi.
for doing this presentation. It's definitely an issue that I think sound recording catalogers deal with a lot, especially since we have large compilations. We might have to make these kinds of decisions about for our time. One of the problems in creating authority records for popular music, you might know, is that you don't always have the information on the item that you're cataloging. And I would say that we may not even have the reference materials to do that kind of work, either, depending on what you might have. And a lot of times what shows up on a recording are actually the copyright claimants for those works. And sometimes those are exactly, who were the writers for those things, but they may also be other business entities, and they may not show who has responsibility for the music versus the lyrics. So that's why I think those two issues are largely why popular music authority records, unless you have like a one work for one thing, I think that's why a lot of people don't go to the trouble, other than local rules too, obviously about workflow. But I think there's a lot of, I mean, I think a lot of your emails over the last year or so have actually prompted a lot of behind the scenes rethinking of these works as adaptations. And I think I think catalogers have traditionally seen a lot of these works as worthy, as I mentioned in the chat, you know, Britten, Granger, folk music settings. There is, if we are doing that, there is very little cause to not do the category that you're talking about, I believe. So I would say, yeah, we need to get better reference sources into our technical services units to help us if we're going to do this.
I do think that our clientele, patrons, whatever term you find comfortable using, are driving a lot of the decision making, and the current need of our patrons may push this type of consideration as much as anything else. The greater availability of the materials is going to also, I think, be a driving force. As more things are republished or published at all, we have to make decisions on how to catalog them. And then, of course, our own local need. You know, there are some collections that are more strongly geared towards this particular type of music than that because of our local needs. So yeah, I realize no matter what we do, no matter what you do, there are just so many things that are playing a role in the decision making.
Thank you.
I don't know what how much time I have left. I
You have
know
about
really
3 minutes, Randy. Sorry.
Oh, 3 minutes.
3
Oh,
minutes.
okay. I cannot see the chat screen from with my presentation up. So if there's anything there or any questions or you know, if hand raised or whatever in this last 3 minutes.
Randy, I've been monitoring the chats and we've had quite a few comments about what you've been discussing today. I don't see anything that strictly says an actual question for you. So what I will do is I will share all of the chat information with you after the meeting. And if anybody would like to take an opportunity to ask a quick question, we do have 2 minutes at this time now.
There's a question from Suzanne Bratt.
Okay.
My apologies if this is a basic question. Are there good resources for best practices in LC Class M placement for spirituals? I ask because M1670 and M1671 say class here accompanied or unaccompanied vocal compositions, including spirituals, and that has a whole range of material in it in my library. So are there good resources for best practices in LC Class M placement for spirituals?
Okay, I must admit, most of my recent cataloging experience has been with sound recordings. And yeah, with media. So I've not really kept up. 1670 certainly sounds like it. I have seen things that have had that call number and I've had no reason to change it. But I am probably not as comfortable about saying, yes, this is it. That somebody else might be able to address that question. I know I had a heck of a time trying to figure out how to classify my book, the recorded solo concert spirituals, because was it a discography? There was no category specifically for spirituals. I don't even remember what I finally ended up deciding on, but I had a nice long conversation with Kathy Abermite about, okay, what kind of things can we use that would be that would be best descriptive of how to catalog it. And I don't know. And that's one thing that maybe also needs to be considered is, are there should we think about other call numbering, either creation, expansion, redefining, whatever? I'm not sure how all of that would be approached to offer more opportunity, means of being able to describe that material accurately. I suspect my time is up. I guess I would say that I must admit I was pleased at the comment that the emails that I've been sending lately have inspired conversation. That's wonderful. I will look forward to seeing how those discussions pan out, where they go and what y'all end up doing. I will be around. I'll continue to annoy and to ask questions as my projects continue. And I look forward to being in touch with you. Thank you all so much for attending and this presentation and for your participation.
Thank you, Randye. And I would like to encourage everyone to use the reactions to give Randye some applause here. I think everybody's really enjoyed your presentation today. And I am going to invite you to go ahead and stop your share screen, Randye, so that we can move on with our next session. And I am going to take a moment here, everyone, just to actually stop the recording.